Now we're ready for some heavy lifting. Two equations in two variables. These are called simultaneous equations, and there are two ways to solve them. And, listen up because this is very important, many word problems can be expressed in terms of simultaneous equations. So it's a really good idea to know how to handle them. They look scary at first, but if you just follow the rules, they're really pretty easy to deal with. First method, substitution. You solve one equation for one of the variables, and you substitute that value into the other equation. Here, let's try one. The two equations are x minus 3y equals 14 and 4x plus 5y equals 22. Well, we can easily solve the first equation for x by subtracting 3y from both sides. So x equals 14 plus 3y. Now we substitute this value of x into the second equation. So we have 4 times the quantity 14 plus 3y plus 5y equals 22. Now all we have to do is distribute, combine terms, and solve. 56 plus 12y plus 5y equals 22. 17y equals negative 34. And y equals negative 2. Now we substitute this value of y in either of the other equations, and we get x equals 8. The second method is called combination, and often it is easier. Let's do the same equations by combination. To do this, we need to get one of the variable terms to be the same in each equation. Don't panic, it's easy. You can see that if we multiply the first equation by 4, we'll get a 4x term in each equation. Here it is. 4 times x minus 3y equals 4 times 14. Now don't forget to multiply on both sides of the equation. So 4x minus 12y, after we distribute, equals 56. Just subtract this equation from the other one. Here it is. Watch out now for the signs. When you subtract the negative 12y, it means you add 12y. So here's what it comes out to be. 17y equals negative 34, and y equals negative 2. Well, that's just what we got before. Okay, let's see how this works in a real word problem from a real ACT test. Most of the simultaneous equations you will run into on this test are much easier than the previous example. Here's a problem we did by back solving, but let's see how to do it with simultaneous equations. The length of a rectangle is 4 inches longer than the width. The perimeter is 28 inches. What is the width? First, if you don't remember what the perimeter is or how to find it, review the section on geometry. The perimeter is twice the length plus twice the width. Okay, first we have to choose what we want our variable to be. Let's let W be the width and L be the length. So here are the two equations. L equals W plus 4. Length is 4 inches greater than the width, and 2L plus 2W equals 28, the equation for the perimeter. This one is easy to do by substitution. Simply substitute the value for L from the first equation into the second equation. So here we have it. 2 times W plus 4 plus 2W equals 28. Distribute and solve. And here's what it looks like. 2W plus 8 plus 2W equals 28. 4W plus 8 equals 28. 4W equals 20. W equals 5. Now let's do it by combination. First, put both equations in the same form by subtracting W from both sides in the first equation. Now we have L minus W equals 4. Multiply this equation by 2, and then add the two equations together. Here they are. And when you add them together, it's 4L equals 36, because the 2W and the minus 2W cancel. So L equals 9, and the width is length minus 4, so 9 minus 4 is 5. You will find that many questions can be solved more quickly by back-solving than by simultaneous equations. However, back-solving may not always work. In fact, the people who make this test are trying to make it harder to back-solve. So be able to solve simultaneous equations. There will always be at least one problem on this test in which you will be asked to find the value of an algebraic expression. If you don't see an equal sign in the problem, then it is not an equation, and you are not being asked to solve for a variable. Most of these problems are testing your ability to handle exponents and signs. So let's try one of them from a recent test. What is the value of x squared plus 2 plus y squared minus 3 when x equals 3 and y equals negative 3? All right, first let's evaluate all the terms. 3 squared is 9. Negative 3 squared is also 9. They're really testing whether you know that when you multiply two negative numbers, you get a positive number. Now all you have to do is add the terms, and they add up to 17. And that happens to be one of the 5 answers. This problem, you can see, could not be back-solved. All right, let's discuss functions here, because many of the function questions just involve finding the value of the function. There's nothing magic about functions or function notation. On one side of the equation will be f of x, and on the other side will be terms that involve x and numbers. Here's a sample problem. F of x equals negative 8x squared. Now it's the x that's squared here, not the 8x and not the negative 8x. It's the x that's squared. So what is f of negative 3? All right. Let's stop here to make sure everybody understands what this question means. It simply means, what is the value of f of x when x is negative 3? All you have to do to solve this is put negative 3 into the function equation for x. So f of negative 3 equals negative 8 times negative 3 squared. Be careful to keep track of the signs. Negative 3 squared is positive 9. And when that's multiplied by negative 8, you get negative 72. Okay, I repeat. In this kind of a problem, be very careful with the signs. There are sure to be problems involving FOIL and factoring, which are pretty much the opposite of each other, and we can consider them together now. To multiply something like this, x plus 3 times x minus 4, you use FOIL, which stands for first, outside, inside, last. First is x times x, that's the first term in each one, and that's x squared. Outside is x times negative 4, that's negative 4x. Inside is 3 times x, or 3x. And the last is 3 times negative 4, which is negative 12. So x plus 3 times x minus 4 equals x squared minus 4x plus 3x minus 12. It's typical when you FOIL to have the inside and outside terms combine. So the final expression is x squared minus x minus 12. All right, now let's look at what happens if we have an expression like x squared plus 7x plus 12, and we need to factor it, which means reverse the FOIL. Set up the parentheses with an x, then we need a sign, then we need a number. Since the signs here are positive, both of the signs will be positive. The numbers have to multiply to 12 and add to 7. A little trial and error will show that the numbers are 4 and 3. So x squared plus 7x plus 12 factors to x plus 3 times x plus 4. When a quadratic is set equal to 0, it is solved by factoring and putting each factor equal to 0. So for this one, x plus 3 equals 0, and x plus 4 equals 0. And therefore, x equals minus 3 and minus 4. Remember that the signs reverse. After you factor, you have to put it equal to 0, so the signs reverse when you solve. Quadratics have two solutions unless they are perfect squares. And we'll get to that in a minute. If you have trouble with factoring, it might be worthwhile to memorize the quadratic theorem, which is an equation that gives you the solution to a quadratic equation. Okay, here's the quadratic equation. It's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. All right, what do we mean by all these letters a, b, and c? If the quadratic is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, those are the three numbers. So when you have a quadratic, you just take those numbers, you put them into the quadratic formula, and out will come, you see there's a plus or minus, so out will come two answers. Those will be the two solutions for x. If you really have trouble factoring, you should try to memorize this equation, because there will be problems on the test that ask you to factor quadratics. Okay, there are a couple of quadratic forms that you should recognize. The most important is difference of squares. Here it is. A squared minus b squared factors to a plus b times a minus b. The squares could be more complicated. For example, 16x to the 4th power minus y to the 8th power. These are both perfect squares. So it factors to 4x squared, that's the square root of 16x to the 4th, plus y to the 4th, which is the square root of y to the 8th, and that's multiplied by 4x squared minus y to the 4th. Notice that the second factor is another difference of squares, so if they asked you to factor completely, you would have to do that again. The other forms that it would be good to recognize are the sum of two numbers squared and the difference of two numbers squared. And here are the two equations. Now that exponents have come up, let's review the rules. Well, you know that x to a power times x to another power is x to the sum of the powers. For example, x to the 4th times x to the 5th is x to the 9th, 4 plus 5. If you raise a power to another power, then you multiply powers. So for example, x to the 4th power raised to the 5th power is x to the 20th power. That concludes this section on algebra. Stay tuned for more.